The shuttle's landing struts kissed the docking platform with a hiss that got swallowed by the station's thick atmosphere. Through the viewport, the Tharixian welcoming committee stood in perfect formation, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the amber light of the methane moon hanging fat and orange in the void beyond. They wore ceremonial robes, intricate patterns woven from metal thread. 6 of them, mandibles held in formal greeting position, antennae perfectly still, elegant, precise, exactly as the briefing had described. The airlock unsealed, and the human walked out in a leather jacket and boots. No helmet, no suit, no breathing apparatus, just skin and fabric and a lopsided grin. The Tharixians froze. Every single one of them. Their mandibles stopped mid-click, their antennae went rigid, and the lead diplomat made a sound like glass cracking. The human took a deep, theatrical breath. Held it. Let it out slow. "Nice place," they said, rolling their shoulders. "Little warm, though." Ambassador Krelix recovered first, their voice translator crackling with what might have been panic. "Honored guest, you must, your containment suit. The atmosphere composition here is 89% sulfur dioxide, trace ammonia, superheated to 140 Celsius. The human tapped the side of their head. "Did my homework. You guys really like it toasty." One of the junior diplomats made a chittering noise and collapsed. Just straight up fainted, crumpling into their robes. The human blinked. Was it something I said? Krelix's mandibles clattered together in a rhythm that the translator couldn't quite parse. This atmosphere is classified toxicity grade 9 for carbon-based life forms. You should be experiencing cellular breakdown. I mean, it's not great." The human sniffed. "Kinda smells like burnt eggs. But I've been to worse parties." The ambassador's assistant leaned close, whispering in rapid clicks. The translator picked it up anyway. "Initiate emergency medical protocols. The human is clearly in shock. Neural damage from atmospheric exposure may be—" "I can hear you," the human said cheerfully. More clicking. "Faster now." Krelix stepped forward, robes sweeping the platform. "Honored envoy, I must insist on an immediate biometric scan. For your safety. Please." "I appreciate the concern," the human said, hands in pockets. "But I signed a waiver. Like, a really long one. My government's lawyers were very thorough." "A waiver does not prevent physiological collapse. Look, I promise if I start dying, you'll be the first to know." The human wandered past the welcoming committee toward the station entrance. This, the way to the conference hall? Krelix and the other diplomats exchanged glances, or whatever the insectoid equivalent was. Antennae twitching, mandibles clicking in some complex pattern that suggested very intense group chat energy. They hurried after the human, who was now touching things. Just walking. Down the corridor, running fingers along the walls, stopping to examine the bioluminescent fungi growing in deliberate clusters near the ceiling. "This edible?" the human asked, pointing. "That is a Class 3 neurotoxin cultivated for atmospheric regulation. So that's a no." The human nodded sagely and kept walking. Krell's assistant leaned close again, voice low. "This species shouldn't exist." The human glanced back over their shoulder. Grinned. "Yeah, we get that a lot." They reached the diplomatic hall. Vast space, vaulted ceiling, walls lined with what looked like living crystal formations that pulsed with soft light. At the center, a circular platform where the official greeting ceremony was supposed to happen. Speeches. Exchanging of symbolic gifts. Very formal, very structured. The human walked right past it and poked one of the crystals. "Don't," Krelix started. "It's warm," the human said, delighted. "Like a space heater. You guys are living in a greenhouse and you didn't even—" That's when the klaxon started, sharp, piercing. The kind of sound that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. The crystal formations flickered, dimmed. The vaulted ceiling groaned. And then the air changed. Not gradually. All at once. Like someone flipped a switch from hellish sauna to frozen wasteland. White vapor exploded from vents in the walls. Liquid nitrogen coolant, dumping into the hall in a cascading wave of sub-zero fury. The temperature plummeted. 140 Celsius to -80 in less than 10 seconds. The Tharixians didn't even have time to run. Their exoskeletons cracked with sounds like gunshots, thermal shock splintering chitin faster than their biology could compensate. They collapsed in heaps of robes and twitching limbs, breath freezing mid-gasp. The human stood there for a second, watched the chaos unfold, vapor swirling, frost spreading across every surface like fast-forward time-lapse footage. Then they zipped up their jacket. Finally, they muttered. Some AC. Krelix was on the ground, mandibles locked open, eyes glazing. 3 other diplomats nearby, equally frozen, equally dying. The human moved, sprinted across the hall, boots crunching on frost, grabbed Krelix by the robes and dragged. The ambassador was heavy, all that chitin and ceremonial metal, but the human hauled them toward an emergency airlock in the far wall. Then went back for the others. 1, 2, 3. Dragged them all into the airlock, slammed the inner door shut, and pulled a multi-tool from their pocket. The kind with 20 different attachments that always seemed useless until you needed one. They pried open the airlock's control panel. Exposed wiring. Manual override switches that weren't supposed to be accessible. The human started rewiring. Outside the airlock, the diplomatic hall had become an Arctic wasteland. Ice crystals hung in the air. The crystal formations had shattered. Inside, heat flooded back. Slow at first, then faster. The Tharixians stirred, exoskeletons creaking, systems rebooting. Krelix's eyes focused, blinked, tracked movement to the airlock window, where the human stood in the frozen hall, surrounded by white vapor and ice, breath misting in the -80 air. They met Krelix's gaze, gave a thumbs up. Krelix stared, mandibles trembling, trying to process what they were seeing. The human just smiled. That's when the emergency broadcast crackled through every speaker in the station. Static. Then a synthetic voice, flat and urgent. Hull breach detected. Sector 9. External pressure loss imminent. All personnel evacuate to emergency shelters. Repeat. Hull breach detected. The human's smile faded. They looked up at the nearest speaker. Then at Krelix through the glass. Mouthed 2 words, "Stay here," and ran toward Sector 9. Krelix tried to stand. Failed. Collapsed back against the airlock wall. One of the other diplomats rasped, voice barely functional. "What? Is that creature?" Krelix didn't answer. They just stared at the frozen hall, at the boot prints in the frost, at the impossible evidence that something had just survived conditions that should have killed it 3 times over, and saved them in the process. Outside, deeper in the station, metal groaned. Something was very wrong, and the human was running straight toward it. Sector 9 looked like something had taken a bite out of it. The human arrived first, naturally, because apparently sprinting through a toxic atmosphere at temperatures that would liquefy most organic matter was just cardio. Commander Vrel arrived 30 seconds later, armored and breathing hard through their tactical respirator, leading a security team that looked very concerned about the whole structural integrity situation. They found the human crouched by the breach, studying it. The hole was clean. Too clean. A perfect circle punched through 3 meters of reinforced hull plating, edges still glowing faint orange from residual heat. Vrel approached, scanner active, mandibles tight. "Step back from the breach. Depressurization risk. It's stable," the human said, not looking up. "Whoever did this sealed the inner membrane. They didn't want to vent the whole sector. Just send a message." Vrel's antennae twitched. "You analyze structural damage now? I'm standing here, aren't I?" The human traced a finger along the scorch marks, then leaned in and sniffed. Actually sniffed the burnt metal. "This isn't an accident. Obviously." Vrel's scanner beeped, displaying molecular breakdown patterns. "Precision laser array, military grade. This is Quarian Dominion signature work." They clicked sharply. The Tharixian equivalent of spitting. "They've been looking for an excuse to undermine our diplomatic standing. Sabotaging a first contact ceremony would... This isn't Quarian tech." Vrel's mandibles stopped mid-click. "Excuse me?" The humans straightened, brushing soot off their hands. Too clean. Quarian laser arrays leave microfracture patterns in the substrate, crystalline residue from their focusing lenses. "This?" They gestured at the breach. Surgical. Different signature entirely. Vrel stared. And you know this how? The human grinned, that unsettling expression that showed too many teeth. We had a war once. Well, 12. You learn to recognize blast patterns. Occupational hazard. 12 wars. Vrel's voice went flat. Your species has engaged in 12 separate armed conflicts? Oh, those are just the big ones. There were a bunch of smaller ones too, but nobody kept good records. The human was already moving along the breach perimeter, examining angles. Point is, this wasn't external aggression. Someone inside did this. Before Vrel could respond, every motion sensor in Sector 9 started pinging, all at once. Overlapping alerts that turned the security feed into a wall of red. Something was moving. Plural. Multiple signatures, scattered through the sector's sublevels. Vrel's entire carapace went rigid. That's impossible. These sensors were just installed. They can't malfunction simultaneously. They're not malfunctioning, the human said quietly. We've got company. They ran. Down 3 levels, through corridors that got narrower and darker, following the signal cluster that was pulsing strongest on Vrel's tactical display. The air got worse as they descended. The normal, toxic but breathable atmosphere gave way to something actively hostile. Caustic vapor that made Vrel's respirator filters scream warnings. The human just kept running. They hit the maintenance tunnel at full speed. Emergency lighting cast everything in sickly green. Pipes dripped fluid that hissed when it hit the floor. Structural supports groaned under stress they weren't rated for. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Vrel's scanner died. Just went black, overwhelmed by interference. What the? Vrel shook it, ran diagnostics. Nothing. Dead tech. The human pulled something from their pocket. A flashlight. Vrel stared at it. That's primitive. It's a light, attached to a battery. Does one thing, does it well. The human clicked it on, swept the beam through the vapor. Sometimes simple tech is the best tech. The beam caught something, movement, twitching. Hunched in the corner where 2 tunnels intersected. They approached slowly. It was a drone. Biomechanical. Tharixian design. All chitinous plating and neural interface nodes, built to navigate station maintenance systems autonomously. But it was wrong. Half melted. Exposed circuitry sparking. Limbs bent at angles that suggested catastrophic damage. And modifications. Ugly ones. Black market components grafted onto standard neural architecture. That's one of ours, Vrel whispered, horror creeping into their voice. That's a station maintenance unit. Who would? Someone reprogrammed it. The human leaned closer, flashlight illuminating the drone's central processor. Stripped the safety protocols. Turned it into... The drone's eye cluster lit up. Bright. Sudden. Locked onto the human's face. And screamed. Not a mechanical sound. Something organic. Wet. Like it was in pain. Then it lunged. The human moved first. Grabbed Vrel's armored shoulder and threw them backward, both of them hitting the tunnel floor hard as the drone launched itself through the space they'd just occupied. It hit the far wall. Stuck there. Limbs scrabbling. Neural nodes firing in seizure patterns. And then it detonated. The explosion was small. Focused. Just enough to shred itself and everything within 2 meters. The human rolled, covering Vrel with their body as shrapnel and bioelectric discharge tore through the tunnel. Heat. Light. The smell of burning chitin and fried circuits. Then silence. The human stood slowly, smoking jacket, hair singed. You okay? Vrel tried to respond. Couldn't. Their respirator was cracked, one of the intake valves shattered by shrapnel. The caustic vapor started seeping in. Vrel felt their throat tighten. Lungs burning. The atmosphere here wasn't just toxic for humans. It was engineered to be toxic for everyone, part of the maintenance system's chemical regulation network. They were suffocating. The humans saw it immediately, didn't hesitate. Ripped the sleeve off their jacket. The leather tore with a sound like a growl. They pressed it against Vrel's damaged respirator, fingers working fast, tying it tight, creating a makeshift seal. Breathe slow, the human said. This'll hold long enough. Vrel gasped, pulled air through the improvised filter. It worked. Barely. But enough. They stared at the human through blurring vision. Why, save me? You don't know. If I'm the traitor. The human shrugged, hauling Vrel to their feet. If you were, you'd have let me die in the coolant spill. We're even. They limped back toward the upper levels together, Vrel leaning heavy on the human's shoulder, both of them leaving scorched footprints in the grime. Behind them, in the maintenance tunnel, pieces of the drone still twitched. The command deck was chaos when they arrived. Emergency lighting, station personnel running diagnostics, and Ambassador Krelix standing at the center console, flanked by 3 high-ranking Tharixians in formal administrative robes. Krelix's mandibles clattered when they saw Vrel's condition. "Commander, medical." "I'm functional." Vrel straightened, pride overriding pain. "Ambassador, we found a modified maintenance drone in sub-level 8. Tharixian design. Reprogrammed for unclear purposes. It self-destructed when discovered." One of the diplomats, a lean Tharixian with silver-traced robes, leaned forward. "Reprogrammed? By whom?" "Unknown. But the modifications suggest internal access, station security clearance." The room went very quiet. Krelix's antennae drooped. "You're suggesting inside job?" The human spoke from the corner where they'd been, standing, silent until now, just watching. "Someone on this station wanted the ceremony disrupted, wanted the hull breached, wanted chaos." The silver-robed diplomat, sub-envoy Threxall according to their nameplate, clicked dismissively. "Absurd. Who would benefit from—" "Anyone with a grudge against the Alliance," Vrel cut in. "Anyone opposed to human integration. Anyone with political aspirations that require destabilization." They gestured at the room. "Take your pick." The third diplomat, older, mandibles scarred, shifted uncomfortably. The human watched them all. Silent, eyes tracking micro-movements. The way Threxall's antennae twitched when Vrel mentioned political aspirations. The way the scarred diplomat's foot tapped in an irregular rhythm. The way Krelix held their robes too tight. Body language, or whatever the insectoid equivalent was. Everyone here had something to hide. Everyone here had a motive. The human's gaze settled on Threxall. Lingered. Threxall's mandibles did a little twitch. Irregular, staccato. The same pattern the drone's limbs had made right before it exploded. The human didn't react, just filed it away, kept watching. Krelix cleared their throat, or the Tharixian equivalent. "We will conduct a full investigation. All station personnel will submit to security screenings. No one is above suspicion." They turned to the human. "Including you, envoy. I trust you understand." "Completely," the human nodded. "Wouldn't have it any other way." Threxall's mandibles twitched again. The human smiled. And in that moment, Vrel realized something terrifying. The human wasn't just observing. They were hunting. The security screenings took 3 hours. 3 hours of biometric scans, access log reviews, and increasingly tense questioning. 3 hours of watching diplomats and security personnel squirm under scrutiny. 3 hours of the human sitting perfectly still in the corner, watching Threxall. Krelix was mid-sentence, explaining protocol for the investigation's next phase, when the human stood up, walked straight across the command deck, pointed at Threxall. "You built the drone." The room went silent. Threxall's mandibles stopped moving. What? That's you." The human's voice was casual, conversational, like they were discussing the weather. "Modified the maintenance drone, programmed the hull breach, sabotaged the life support. That was all you." Threxall's antennae went rigid. "This is absurd. I have served the Tharixian diplomatic corps for 20 cycles." "Your mandibles twitch when you lie." The human stepped closer. Same pattern the drone's limbs made. Neurological signature. "You controlled it remotely, didn't you? But you didn't account for the feedback loop. Left a trace. You're making baseless accusations." "Am I?" The human moved fast. Crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, grabbed Threxall's data slate from their robes, and tossed it to Vrel. Check the last file access. Vrel caught it, mandibles clicking skeptically. Activated the display. Went very still. Commander? Krellix's voice held an edge. Vrel looked up slowly. Drone modification blueprints. Accessed 18 hours ago. User authentication. They trailed off, staring at Threxall. Yours. Threxall backed up a step. That's... someone planted... The timestamps match your shift rotation, Vrel continued, voice flat. You were in maintenance control when the modifications were uploaded. You... Threxall moved. Fast. Faster than anyone expected. Their robes parted, and a plasma cutter appeared in their manipulator limbs, the kind used for precision hull repairs, compact and deadly. They lunged sideways, grabbed Krellix by the throat, and pressed the cutter's edge against the ambassador's carapace. Everyone froze. Nobody moves. Threxall's voice shook, translator crackling with distortion. I will cut through their neural stem. Instant death. Don't test me. Vrel's security team raised weapons but didn't fire. Couldn't. Not with Krellix directly in the line. The human didn't move. Just stood there, hands loose at their sides. Okay, they said calmly. So we're doing this the loud way. Threxall dragged Krellix backward, toward the airlock at the far end of the command deck. I didn't want this. None of this was supposed to happen. The coolant breach was an accident. The override signal malfunctioned. You tried to kill everyone in that hall, Vrel hissed. I tried to delay the ceremony, make humans look incompetent. Threxall's mandibles clattered. But then this one? They jerked their head toward the human. Survived. And saved you. And everything fell apart. They reached the airlock. Krellix struggled weakly, mandibles clicking in distress. Threxall fumbled for the control panel with their free limb. I'm leaving. Opening this airlock. Taking a shuttle. And if anyone follows me, I vent this entire deck. You won't make it to the shuttle, the human said. Watch me. The human smiled. Not the friendly one from before. Something else. Something with edges. No, I mean you physically won't make it. They started walking forward. Slow. Steady. Because I'm faster than you think. Stop! Threxall raised the plasma cutter. I'll kill... The human charged. Vrel screamed a warning, but it was already too late. Threxall fired the plasma cutter. A coherent beam of superheated particles that could slice through reinforced hull plating. The human dove. Under the beam. Impossible reaction time. Dropped into a slide across the command deck's smooth floor, momentum carrying them forward like a missile. Hit Threxall's legs. The sub-envoy went down hard, limbs tangling, grip on Krellix breaking. The ambassador stumbled free, gasping. Threxall scrambled upright, panic overriding training, and did the only thing their terrified brain could process. Slammed the emergency airlock release. The doors blew open. Explosive decompression hit like a physical wave. Air screamed outward into the void. Everything not bolted down became a projectile. Vrel's security team grabbed support rails. Krellix hit the deck, magnetic boots engaging. Threxall was sucked toward the opening, limbs flailing, trying to grab purchase on anything. The human was already moving. Grabbed a support beam with one hand, arm muscles locking, boots skidding across the floor as the vacuum tried to claim them, and caught Threxall's leg with the other hand. Just caught it. Now they dangled half out of the airlock, one arm wrapped around the beam, the other holding Threxall suspended over the void. Beyond the opening, stars. The methane moon. Empty space that went on forever. Threxall screamed, or tried to. The thin atmosphere couldn't carry much sound. The human hung there, perfectly calm, looking down at the writhing diplomat. I've got a grip, the human said conversationally, voice barely audible over the rushing air. But I'm also getting really curious how long you can hold your breath. Threxall's mandibles clattered frantically. Their translator was dying, losing power, but fragments came through. Please, don't. Can't hear you. The human's fingers loosened slightly. Just enough for Threxall to slip an inch. You're going to have to speak up. Threxall's entire body convulsed in terror. Or, the human continued, You could tell me everything. Right now. Who hired you? Why? All of it. Vrel was shouting something, trying to reach the airlock controls, but the decompression had damaged the panel. Krelix stared, mandibles frozen. Threxall screamed through the thin air, words tumbling out in panicked bursts. Rogue faction, Tharixian isolationists, wanted to destabilize, frame humans as weak, unsuitable partners. They paid me, said it would be simple. Just delay the ceremony. Make humans look fragile. Names, the human said. I don't know. They contacted me through encrypted channels. Promised advancement. Said humanity would ruin us. That you're too dangerous, too unpredictable. That last part's probably fair. The human's grip tightened again, pulled. Started hauling Threxall back inside. Vrel finally got the secondary airlock controls active. Slammed the override. The doors reversed, grinding shut against the vacuum. The pressure equalized with a sound like thunder. Everyone collapsed, breathing hard. The human dropped Threxall on the deck. The sub-envoy lay there, twitching, mandibles clicking in shock. Vrel's security team swarmed, restraints deploying, taking Threxall into custody. Krelix stood slowly, stared at the human. You. The ambassador's voice shook. You risked death. For a truth. The human dusted off their jacket. One sleeve was missing. The other was scorched. Their hair was a mess. I risked mild discomfort, they corrected. There's a difference. Mild, Krelix's mandibles trembled. You were hanging out of an airlock, in vacuum, no suit, no protection. Yeah, but only for like 30 seconds. The human checked their watch. I can hold my breath for about 3 minutes if I really try. Had plenty of time. Vrel stared. 3 minutes, in hard vacuum. I mean, it's not pleasant. Ears pop like crazy. But it's doable. The command deck was silent. Krelix turned to Vrel, leaned close. Whispered in rapid clicks that the translator barely caught. What kind of species are they? Vrel didn't answer. Couldn't. Just kept staring at the human, who was now examining their ruined jacket with mild disappointment. I liked this jacket, the human muttered. Had it for years. Threxall groaned from the deck, restrained and broken. The isolationist plot was exposed, the saboteur caught, the crisis resolved. And somehow, impossibly, the human had done it while treating physics and biology like polite suggestions. Krelix's antennae drooped in something that might have been resignation or fear. They weren't sure anymore which one was more appropriate. Threxall was detained in a shielded cell deep in the station's security core, awaiting transport to a high-security facility. The isolationist faction was being systematically dismantled across 3 systems. Warrants issued, accounts frozen, the conspiracy unraveling like cheap thread. And the Tharixian High Council convened in emergency session to discuss the only question that mattered now. What do we do about humanity? The council chamber was ancient, carved from a single massive crystal formation, walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that recorded every word spoken within. 11 elders sat in a semicircle, their ceremonial robes marking decades of service. Ambassador Krelix stood at the center, mandibles tight, delivering a report that felt less like testimony and more like a warning. The human envoy survived atmospheric toxicity that should have caused cellular collapse within minutes. They endured thermal shock at -80 degrees with no protective equipment. They held their breath in hard vacuum for 33 seconds while performing a tactical extraction. One of the elders, ancient and scarred, leaned forward. And you verified these observations personally? I was there. Krela's antennae drooped. I watched them do things that violate our understanding of biological limits. They are unpredictable, adaptive, and unnervingly resilient. Another elder, younger, mandibles clicking in agitation. But can we control them? The chamber went quiet. Krelix paused. Let the silence stretch. Then carefully. I don't think anyone can. The elders shifted uncomfortably, robes rustling like wind through dead leaves. The eldest, a Tharixian so old their carapace had faded to pale gray, spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "We must hear from the human directly. Bring them before this council." Krelix bowed and withdrew. 20 minutes later, the human walked in, still wearing the torn jacket, one sleeve missing, scorch marks across the shoulders, boots scuffed, hair still a mess. They looked like they'd just survived a disaster, which, technically, they had. The human stood in the center of the crystal chamber, hands in pockets, completely at ease. The elders stared. One of them leaned toward another, whispering in clicks too quiet for the translator. The human's eyes tracked the movement anyway. The eldest spoke first. "Envoy of humanity, you have survived conditions that should have killed you multiple times. You have exposed a conspiracy against this station. And now you stand before the High Council, awaiting judgment on whether your species will be granted access to the Galactic Assembly." "Sounds about right," the human said. "Before we deliberate, we must understand something." The elder's mandibles clicked slowly. "The question all of us have been avoiding since you arrived." The chamber held its breath. "Why didn't you die?" The human smiled. Not the friendly one, not the predatory one. Something else, something tired and a little sad. "You want the short version or the long one?" "We have time." "All right." The human took a breath, looked around at the 11 elders watching them like they were a bomb that might detonate. "Earth is what you'd call a death world." One elder's antennae twitched. "We are familiar with the classification." "Yeah, but I don't think you really get it." The humans started pacing, casual, like they were telling a story at a bar. "See, the atmosphere you're all so concerned about? The sulfur dioxide and ammonia? On Earth, we breathe oxygen. You know what oxygen is to most of the galaxy?" Silence. "A corrosive poison, highly reactive, causes oxidative stress at the cellular level. Most species avoid it. We breathe it constantly, every second of every day. Our entire biology is built around metabolizing something that would kill you." The elders exchanged glances. "Then there's gravity," the human continued. "Earth's surface gravity is— what did your scanner say, Krelix? 0.98 standard?" 0.96, Krelix confirmed quietly. "Right. We jog in that, for fun, for recreation. Your species evolved on a moon with 0.4 gravity. Your bones would snap under Earth's pull. Ours got dense, strong. We carry our own weight, like it's nothing." One of the younger elders interrupted. "What about radiation? Your star—" "Oh, the sun." The human grinned. "Yeah. Our sun dumps ultraviolet radiation that causes cellular breakdown and genetic mutation. You know what we do about it? We call it a nice day, put on some lotion, go to the beach." The chamber was dead silent now. "Then there's temperature regulation. You nearly died in that coolant spill because your biology can't handle rapid thermal shifts. Ours can. We sweat, shiver, adjust blood flow. We've survived in deserts at 50 degrees Celsius and Arctic tundras at -40. Our bodies just compensate." The human stopped pacing, looked directly at the eldest. "We're endurance predators. Our ancestors hunted by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We heal from wounds that would be fatal to most species. We have an adrenaline response that temporarily overrides pain and boosts strength. We convert calories into energy so efficiently we can go days without food." An elder in the back spoke up, voice wavering. "But surely there are limits. Weaknesses we should know about." The human tilted their head, considering. "Sure. We're not invincible. Plenty of things can kill us. Dehydration after a few days, starvation after a few weeks, extreme temperatures, eventually, diseases, injuries, all the usual suspects. Then how—" "But here's the thing." The human's expression shifted. Something darker. "We don't quit. You drop a human in the worst conditions imaginable, and yeah, they might die. But before they do, they'll try everything. They'll improvise, adapt, use tools, use each other. We're pack hunters who learn to cooperate on a planetary scale." The human gestured around the chamber. "You built this station to be safe for your species. Controlled environment, perfect conditions. We built our cities in deserts, on fault lines, in hurricane zones, on frozen tundra. Not because we had to, because we wanted to. We saw hostile territory and said, that's prime real estate. One elder's antennae drooped completely. That's insane. Yeah. The human smiled. We get that a lot too. Another elder leaned forward, mandibles clicking rapidly. And you expect us to welcome this madness into the Galactic Assembly? To give your species access to our worlds, our technology, our... We're not asking for access, the human interrupted gently. We're offering partnership. You've got 3 centuries of peace and prosperity. That's beautiful. Really. But you've also got stagnation. When's the last time any of you explored something truly dangerous? Pushed boundaries? Took a risk that mattered? The chamber was silent. We're not here to conquer, the human continued. We're here because the universe is big and weird and terrifying, and we want to see what's out there, with you, if you'll have us. One elder's mandibles clattered nervously. Your planet tried to kill you, and you just... adapted? The human's grin widened. We didn't adapt. We got stubborn. The elders sat frozen, processing. The eldest finally spoke, voice hollow. Is there more? Oh yeah. The human's eyes gleamed. And that's just the biology. Want to hear about the cultural stuff? No. The eldest's mandibles snapped shut. No, I don't think we do. The council convened in private session. It took 4 hours. The vote was close. 6-5. Humanity was admitted to the Galactic Assembly. Barely. Krellix personally escorted the human back to the shuttle bay. Neither spoke for most of the walk. At the airlock, Krellix stopped, turned. I must ask. Their voice was quiet. When you stood in the frozen hall pulling us to safety, were you afraid? The human considered that, really thought about it. A little, they admitted. Fear's natural, keeps you sharp. But you acted anyway. Yeah. Fear's just data. You decide what to do with it. Krellix's mandibles clicked softly. We will be watching your species carefully. The human smirked. Good. We're about to get interesting. They boarded the shuttle. The airlock sealed with a hiss. Krellix stood there for a long moment, watching through the viewport as the shuttle's engines ignited. Blue-white thrust. The small craft detached and angled toward the jump point. They walked back to the command deck slowly, antennae drooping. Commander Vrel was there, standing at a console, staring at something on the display. Commander, Krellix said, status report? Vrel didn't respond immediately, just kept staring. Vrel? The security commander looked up. Their mandibles were trembling. Ambassador, I was reviewing the medical scans we took, the passive ones from the atmospheric sensors. And? Their resting state physiology. Vrel's voice was hollow. Heart rate, respiration, stress hormone levels. I compared them to our combat readiness metrics. Krellix felt something cold settle in their thorax. What did you find? The human was never stressed. Not once. Vrel turned the display toward them. Not in the toxic atmosphere. Not in the coolant breach. Not even dangling from the airlock. Their biology never registered threat. Krellix stared at the data. They weren't even trying, Vrel whispered. When they saved us. When they caught the saboteur. All of it. That was them at rest. The command deck was quiet except for the ambient hum of station systems. Through the viewport, the human's shuttle was just a speck now, accelerating toward the jump point. Krellix's mandibles moved soundlessly for a moment before words came. What have we done? Vrel didn't answer. Just kept staring at the scans. At the proof that humanity hadn't been tested by the station's dangers. They'd been holding back. The shuttle vanished into the jump point. A flash of light. Then nothing. Krellix turned away from the viewport, walked to the center of the command deck, looked at the empty space where the human had stood just hours before, where they'd smiled and joked and treated certain death like mild inconvenience. We should never have let them leave that room alone, Krelix said quietly. Vrel's antennae drooped in agreement. On the display, the scan data still glowed. Resting heart rate, 68 beats per minute. Stress response, none detected. Threat assessment, environment classified as benign. Somewhere in the void, the shuttle carrying humanity's envoy jumped to faster than light, carrying with it a message the Tharixians were only beginning to understand. Earth was a death world, and its children were coming to the stars. The council chamber's bioluminescent walls pulsed once, recording the session's final words for posterity. In 1,000 years, historians would study this moment, the day the galaxy learned that humanity wasn't fragile. They were terrifying, and they'd just been invited in.